In this video, we're looking at how to only show the images of your selected variant. You guys had a lot of comments and suggestions from the previous video that we did on this, so we're back with an upgraded version. If you didn't see the previous video, don't worry, you don't actually need the previous one to make this one work. So along with some minor fixes, there are two major updates. The first is that we've extended this to work with the media modal. So when you click on the product image to zoom in, it will only show the selected variant image, whereas before it was actually showing them all. We've also added two new ways to group your images together. Some of you thought the Metafield and meta object method just wasn't that efficient for bulk updating your store, especially if you have hundreds of products. So now you can group your images based on the image file name or the image alt text. The best part of this customization is that you get a really great feature without paying for any apps. With a little DIY, you can add this to your store for free. It does require you to edit your theme code, but don't worry if you don't know how to code. I'll guide you through it step by step. All right, let's jump in and take a look. Let's first take a look at what you get with this customization. We're here on our demo store, and you can see that we've selected the black variant, and we're getting images of just the black shirt. If we select blue, then we only get the blue shirt images, green, red, white. So we're only seeing the images of the selected variant. Now, if you go to the product without this customization, what you'll see is all of the images all at once. And so when you have multiple images for each variant and you're showing them all together, it can sometimes feel really cluttered and doesn't really give your store the look that you want it to. So by doing it this way, you can organize your images and only show them the ones that they should be looking at. What you can also see here is if we open up the media modal, so when you zoom in and click on the image, you can get only the images again of the shirt that you've selected. So blue will only show blue, black will only show black, right? And so that mimics what we see here on the product page. Uh, if you don't have the customization, again, you're just going to see all the different images when you zoom in. And so that's the customization in a nutshell. It works not just with the thumbnail version. So if we go to our theme editor, product information, and we change our desktop layout, so if we change it from thumbnails to stacked, for example, and we save that and we refresh, it works in this layout as well. So black will show black, blue will show blue, uh, and so on. We also have some settings that come along with this customization. So let's just take a quick look at that. So you're going to find that in the product information section as well. Just scroll down a little bit and there's this new heading, selected variant image grouping. So you can actually turn it on or off. So if you don't want it on, you can just uncheck that box. And when you refresh, then it just goes back to the default behavior, right? As if the customization wasn't there. But because we're doing this customization in this video, we're going to want to have that active. Okay, so next we have the source where we are grouping these variant images together. So we need some way to tell your store which images should go with what. So I won't go into too much detail about how these work just yet. We'll get into that a little bit later. But we have three methods now. So one is you create a meta field, and we're going to create meta object entries to group them together. So this is going to be sort of maybe the more easy way to do it if you prefer to just click and use the GUI, the Shopify GUI. File name and alt text are probably a little less user friendly, but can be quicker if you know how to update your file names or alt text in bulk. So if you have a lot of different products, hundreds of products, then you probably want to use one of these methods. If you only have a handful, maybe a dozen or so, then the Metafield might be better for you. Like I said, I'll get into this a little bit later on when we actually do the customization and start to group these products together. But for now, just know that you have multiple different options to do this, and you can choose the one that you like best. And then these two here are just to support the file name and alt text methods so that you can use whatever file format or alt text format that you want. This gives you the flexibility to find the information that you need to put in there. Again, like I said, we'll get into that a little bit later. So don't worry about what all of this means right now. For now, you just need to know that we have these settings available to you, and we're going to add this to your store. So let's go take a look. So we've just installed a fresh new version of Dawn. In this case, it's Dawn 13.0.1. But if you're using your old theme and not a fresh version, then just make sure to duplicate your theme first. So in case anything goes wrong, you can always revert back to your old version. In this case, we're using a fresh new install, so we're starting from scratch. We can take a look at the product we were looking at earlier, and you can see now that it doesn't matter which variant we're looking at. We're still going to see all of the variant images show up. It looks quite cluttered, so what we're going to do is we're going to add this customization in back so that we can only show the selected variant images. Okay, so now that you've duplicated your theme or you've installed your fresh one, let's edit code. So in here, we're going to edit some files and we're also going to create some files. So the first one we're going to do is the main product.liquid file. Okay, so let's open this one up. And if you scroll to the bottom, you're going to see this section here, schema. So this is where all the settings for your product information are found. What we're going to do is we're going to just scroll near the bottom, or you could just look for hide. And you're going to see here, there's some sections for hide variants. And if you actually go into your theme editor, right? So your theme editor, product information, you can see here, there's actually a setting here, hide other variants media, right? And then enable video looping. So enable video loopings right there, right? So these are just the definitions for those settings. And what we can do is we want to add a brand new area right here where we add our settings. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come right after the enable looping, right, where this comma is, create some space, and let's copy and paste our settings in, right? So this is our settings. We'll save, and then we'll come back to our theme editor, refresh, and now you can see we've got this new section here with all these settings right between the padding and the enable looping, like where we wanted it to be. Now, it doesn't matter what we select here because these settings don't do anything yet. We have to add additional code to look for what these setting values are and then do something with it. So let's continue. Next, we're going to open up the product media gallery.liquid file. And here we're going to add a little bit of code at the very top, right? So we've got these comments here and this liquid tag here. So let's just add this at the very top right here. It's a couple of variables that we need and a little bit of CSS styling. Next, we're going to be looking for this li element. So this is a list element. And we're going to just come right above it and we're going to copy and paste our first code block right here. Okay, and then right beneath it, there's actually going to be a second list element. So this one is going to represent your primary image. So this big one right here. And then the second one is a loop, right? So you've got a loop right here. And it loops through all of the remaining images. And so we're going to come right above this one as well. And we're going to create some space. And we're going to copy and paste a second code block. Now, both code blocks are fairly similar, but they are different because one's handling the all the additional images, and the first one is handling just the first instance. So this one's the first instance with this one, and then we've got the second one. What we're also going to need to do is we're going to need to modify our list element. So there's going to be a new class that we want to add. So here we've got this class here. So we can just copy and paste our class right here. And so we have a check to see if the hide image variable is true or false. Actually, sorry, this is the wrong one. We don't want to add it to the first list element because this is, like I mentioned previously, this is the the first image, and we always want the first image to show up. So we're actually going to only put the class in the second one here, right? And so what this is doing is it's checking to see if this hide image variable is true or false, and it's checking to see if it belongs to the variant grouping. If it does, then it will show it. If it doesn't, then it will hide. Okay, so we add that in there. And then we also want to add this attribute here. So if we've got a data media ID, underneath it, we're going to add this data variant grouping. And the same thing on this side, we also want to add this here. So those are the updates we're going to be making to the list element. And we're going to do this a second time. So if you scroll a little bit further down, you're going to see that these list elements show up again. So one right here, right? And the other one is a little bit lower right here. And so the first one that we just edited was for the stacked version of your of the product page. So remember when we updated the layout here, right? So it's thumbnails versus stacked. So this is the stacked in 2 columns version that we just edited. Now we're looking at the thumbnails and carousel. So that's why we need to do it twice. So what we're going to do is in the first instance of the list element, right? So right here, we're going to come right above it again, and we're going to copy and paste our first code block, and then for the second one, we're going to paste the second code block. And then similarly, we want to add the class only to the second one again, right? So that one right there. And then we're going to add the data attribute to both. Okay, and so we can save that. And the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to update the product media modal. So right now, we can't quite show the groupings yet because we're not quite finished. So we're going to keep moving along. And now we're going to be updating the media modal. So the media modal is when we zoom in on these images here. And so that's this file right here, product media modal. Open that up. And we're going to do something very similar, right? So we're going to copy and paste our variable definitions at the very top. And we're going to add the first code block right here above the this liquid tag here and this if statement and below this div. So right there. For the second block, we're going to need to modify the existing code a little bit. So you have this liquid tag here and it closes right here with everything in between liquid. So the way that we've written our code here is with single lines. So if I paste this in, there's going to be a bit of a syntax error. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this closing tag. Actually, let's undo first so it's a little bit easier to see what's happening. So we're going to take this tag here and just stick it underneath there. So this way, our we're opening and closing our liquid tag here, and then we're going to take this one here and adding it there. So we've essentially just split these two sections in half, right? So instead of it being 2 blocks, it's now, instead of being 1 block, now it's 2. And this allows us to copy and paste our code right in between. So there we go. Just a quick note, you can see here that the indentation isn't the most pretty. I like to just paste it in like this first because it just allows you to see what you've added a little bit more quickly because it's all along the left edge. Once you're happy with the code and you know it works, then you can just format it. Okay, and then now we need to add a couple of additional parameters to this line right here, render product media. And so we're adding the hide image and variant grouping name parameters. And so we just can copy and paste that in right there. So just put that in the end. And there's another time we render it right here, product media. So we're going to add that there and we can save. Okay, so we're rendering product media. We've added these two parameters there. We now need to edit product media because it's been changed. And so let's open up the file. And here we see this image tag, and this is how the images are being shown. Um, and so what we're going to do is we want to add two new classes to the image. And so we've just copy and paste that right there. Right. And then we also want to add our data attribute. So let's come right here, data media ID. We can just add a new line and then add our data variant grouping information right there. Okay, and so let's save. We're moving along. So the next file we're updating is the global.js. Before I continue, if this seems a little bit confusing or a bit much, just slow down, take it step by step, pause the video if you need to kind of go through the different steps. You can even kind of see where like the line numbers that I'm adding it in if you're using the exact same version, Dawn 13.01, without any prior modifications. So you can kind of compare the video versus what you're doing to get this all in proper. Okay, so global.js. So this is the JavaScript that's going to make the changes responsive. So right now, when you load the page, everything will look fine. But if you press a button, that behavior is handled by JavaScript. So that's why we're adding some JavaScript so that we can hide and show images dynamically. And so what we're going to do is we're going to, in here, look for the method update media. So this is right there. So that's how update media is defined. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating our own method. And let's just group it together right underneath update media grouping. And so this is in some ways extending the functionality of update media. So update media, what this does is it changes the images when you change the variant, right? So if you press blue, it's what handles changing this image right here. And so we've added this new one here. And what we're going to do is we're going to call it in the update media method. And so right here, you can see here that we've got this area right here. What we're going to do is we're going to add a curly bracket before and after this line, just so that we can add a new call to our new method. And so this change allows us to call the update media grouping from the update media method whenever we change a variant. Okay, so let's just save that. And that's pretty much all the code changes. And now we're ready to group our images. So we're back in our theme editor, and we can see here this new section with the settings for our variant image grouping. And like I mentioned previously, we have 3 methods to group your images: Metafield, filename, and alt text. You don't have to use all 3. I mean, in fact, you can't. You have to only use one of them, but you can decide which one you want to use. And so I'm going to take you through the steps so that you have the option to use any of the 3. And the Metafield one is the one that we used in the previous video. So if you've already come from the previous video, then you've already set up your meta object, you've already set up your metafields. You don't have to do that again. If you haven't seen that video, then it's okay. We're going to go through it again in this one here. Now, the advantages of using the metafield is that it's actually probably better if you have a smaller catalog where you only have a few products or maybe a dozen products, because you actually get to use the Shopify GUI. You can just kind of click and select your products, and you don't have to think about really what goes kind of behind the scenes with the file names or the alt text. That can get a little bit more complicated and difficult to manage Whereas here with the meta fields and meta objects, you actually get to handle it all in one place. And you'll see that a little bit later. But the con is that if you do have a lot of products, then it can be time consuming to set up. You should actually be able to add these meta object entries in bulk with Matrixify. But if that doesn't work for you, then a little bit later, we'll be looking at the file name and alt text method. Okay, so let's just get started. Let's create the meta object and the meta field for our products and create an entry so you can see what this looks like in action. So let's first jump into the meta field and meta object definition area. So that's actually custom data when you go into the settings. And regardless of whether you want to use the meta object or meta field way of grouping your images, you probably still want to set up the definitions so you have that option in the future. So what we're going to do is we're going to add definition, and we will be creating the meta object with the name variant images grouping. Now, while I'm creating these definitions, do use the exact spelling and names because the code is actually going to be looking for some of these values. Okay, and so the first field we're going to add is going to be a single line text, and we're going to call this name. And we're actually also going to add an expression. So this expression right here means that we can only use letters, numbers, dashes, and underscores. And the reason we're doing that is because if your name has like a space or something, then the code is actually going to struggle. So we're going to add this expression in here to prevent ourselves from giving it a name that the code can't read. And so let's just add that in. Actually, let's make this required as well. Okay, done. The next field we're going to do is we're going to make this a variant, product variant. It's going to be a list of variants, right? And so let's call this variants, and let's add. And then let's do one last one where this is going to be files. And then it's going to be a list of files. And we're going to call this file grouping. And we'll add. Okay, so that's our meta object definition. We can save. And we can come back out, go to our products, and add definition. And so we're going to call this one the variant images grouping list. And we're going to make this type meta object. And we're going to select the meta object we just created. So variant images grouping, just like that. And this is going to be a list of entries, right? So we want to be able to select multiple of these. And so let's save. Okay, so now that we've added our definition, we can start grouping our images together. Okay, and so let's add entry. And we're going to give this a name. So let's call this t-shirt t-shirt original black. Okay, and so what we're going to do is we're going to look for the variants of the product that we're looking for. So you can use keywords to find your product. In this case, I can use V2 because I know there's only one V2 in this store, and so this helps me find the product a little bit more quickly. And here we've got our black variants, so we can just select these all, add, and then what we're going to do is we're also going to select the files associated with that product. So I know that this product has these 4 files right here, and this one here. Yep. So these are our 4 black images, and we can say done, and we can save. And that's our first meta object entry. So let's just see this in action, actually. So if we come to our product, so this is our V2 product, and scroll to the very bottom, you'll see all the different meta fields that we have. So there's a long list here. You can ignore all of them, essentially. except for the one that we just created. I actually need to refresh first for it to show up because we just created it. Okay, so there it is at the very top. All these previous ones are ones we've done for other customizations, but this is the one we care about. So we can select our entry there, t-shirt original black. Let's save. And let's just refresh our page and see what happens. So we'll select black, refresh. Nothing happens. Why did nothing happen? We actually didn't even turn it on yet. So we have to enable our variant, select the variant images to group together. We also need to set it to be the Metafield. So let's save that in order to activate it. Okay, so let's try that again. Okay, there we go. There you go. You can see that we only have our 4 images. We click into the modal media and then we only get the black. But we've only put in the black so far. So if we select blue, nothing actually happens, right? Because we have no grouping, then this blue variant image doesn't actually see any of the other blue images because we haven't told our store that that these other blue images are supposed to go along with it, right? So it's all blank. But black, we have it. So now let's set up the other ones. So we can go back to our our meta object area, right? T-shirt original black, add entry, and we can call this t-shirt original blue. And again, we can just kind of go through this process. All right, set up our blue variants and select our blue files. Save. And then come back to our product, right? And now we can select the blue one as well. We can save. Now if we refresh and we select the blue, now we can do blue, right? But the green and red haven't been set up. And you just repeat the process for the green, red, and white as well. So you can see here that if you have a lot of products, that it may be a lot of clicking to kind of set those all up. And you may also have a little bit of a harder time, say, finding the exact files that correspond to that product, which is why maybe it's not as handy if you have hundreds of products on your store. But what I do really like about this is that you have one place right here in your meta objects entries for the variant images grouping where you can see all of the different groupings that you have, and you can edit them very easily, right? So you can come in here, you can change the images around, and it's just clicking, right? And there's a sort of visual component to this, and which is why I really like this method. So why don't I just quickly make the rest of these so that we have it complete, and then we'll move on to doing the file name and alt text method. So I'm just gonna really quickly zoom through this. Okay, so we've added our meta object entries. Let's go back to our product. We can add them into our product meta field, make sure we've got all of the right ones that we want. We can save. And when we refresh, we now have it working for all of our variants. Okay, so that's the Metafield meta object method. Let's move on to the file name and alt text way as well. So let's now change this to file name and save. And then let's refresh. Okay, so you can see here, we're not grouping everything together anymore. We just see all of the variant images at once. So how does this work? Well, if we go to our product, we can see all of our images here, and you can actually see sort of the file name here. So I've actually already named the files in a certain way, and you're going to need to do that for all of your product images as well. And so we have here a format where it's sort of t-shirt, a double underscore, white, double underscore, hanging, right? And so you can see here that the white is sort of in the center, right? So it's the second right here, the color, right? The color where you're going to be grouping them together. So blue, this is blue as well, and then this other blue here, right? So it's always in the second position, and it's spelled the exact same way. And so what we're going to be doing here is we have this split delimiter. So what we're looking for is a double underscore. And so uh, here in this case, see, we're looking for this double underscore, and then whenever it sees a double underscore, it's going to split the file. So you have three sections: t-shirt, hanging, and blue. So this is the first section, the second section, and the third section. And we also have this other section setting here on the name position, right? So we're actually going to be looking for the second position because that's where we're grouping it together, right? And so let's save, and let's refresh, and there we go. It all works again, right? So it's all grouped together. Media modal works as well. And so the concept is pretty straightforward, right? So we just need to make sure that we have a consistent delimiter, that we can split our file into pieces. And then you want to have your grouping parameter. So in this case, it's blue. We're calling it blue. So all the other files that you want to put together also have to have blue in the name. And it has to be in the exact same position as well. So you have to be really careful with your file formatting. It can't be, you can't just randomly name it anything. If you want to just have random file names, that's where the Metafield version works well. But in this case, you have to be organized, and your file format has to have a very specific structure. But because I don't know how you like to organize your files, I've given you the option to select the delimiter and the position that you like, and then you can choose it to be whatever you want. And the alt text actually works in the exact same way. So you can so in this case, I've actually changed the position to the third position. So why don't we use alt text? We'll save, and then we'll refresh, and we're going to see that it doesn't really work, right? So let's just refresh. Doesn't really work. But if we change it to the third position, because that's where the grouping should be, there we go, right? So we've got all of our files grouped again. And so if you already have hundreds of products already in your store, then you're going to have to find a way to consistently update all of your alt text or file names. You could do it probably not the way you want to. You don't want to do it manually, but you can kind of come in here and update the handle, right? So if you actually change this, you can change it to whatever you like. So I could actually put this in the first position. Or the alt text, you can also change it. And so you can actually also change the delimiter, right? So we've got, let's go through these, and let's just change all of these to like a star, for example, right? So we're going to change the delimiter to star. We'll save that. And then I'm going to work through here. You don't have to watch me do this. I'll zoom through or just kind of cut back in when it's all changed. Okay, so we've just changed all of our alt text delimiters to stars instead of underscores, right? So right now we're still using the alt text and double underscore delimiter. So if I refresh, it's just not going to work properly, right? So now it's just showing all the images, but let's change this to a star, an asterisk, and refresh. There we go. We've got that working again, right? So it gives you just the flexibility of choosing whichever file name format you like. But like I mentioned previously, just be careful with it because the position matters, the file format matters, and the delimiter has to be unique. Like it has to split it in exactly the way where your position is consistent across all of your file names. But yeah, if that gives you the option to kind of get things updated in bulk, then you can do that. Again, Matrixify or Hexstum has some tools for bulk editing. Now, you might be wondering why do we have all these different methods and why do we have to go through this process? Well, it's because you have all these different images, but the only person who knows which image goes with which variant is going to be you, right? So you're not necessarily going to be grouping by color. You might be grouping by style, by material, by size, right? We're not really sure how that's going to be, and so you have to be the one to define it. Um, and so I'm just trying to give you all the tools you have to make that grouping a little bit easier. But once you've done it, right, then you have a really nice, sleek product page where where you're showing only the selected variant. And so there we have it. We've now added a customization to your store that you can just show the selected variant images. You have 3 different ways of doing it, just to give you that flexibility to organize your images whichever way you want. So I do hope that you found this useful. And if you did, I'd appreciate if you liked and subscribed. It really does go a long way to help us keep making these tutorials for you. Okay, so that's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.